Hello, I'm Tigerfang, and welcome to the Den. With Leagues now being a month since it's finished, I thought it was a pretty good time to just do a detailed review of this league, comparing it to other temporary game modes, and asking the big question, was RuneScape 3's first league a success? This will very much be a video you can just sit and play in the background while you go about your stuff. But my short answer is yes, with an asterisk. If this is the only leagues RS3 ever gets, I would say it's an absolute failure. But for reasons I'll cover throughout this video, I think it has done a fantastic job of laying the foundations for something truly special. Before diving into why, let me give you some background on where I'm coming from. I absolutely love temporary game modes with the RuneScape IP. I have well over 1,000 hours in Oldschool RS's leagues and over 600 hours in this first leagues. During RS3's league, I peaked at rank 5 and I held that for about a week before finishing at rank 88 after returning back to work. I also completed Oldschool RS Gridmaster during this, so you'll probably hear me reference that quite a bit. When I talk about leagues, know that I come from a perspective of wanting to make future leagues the best leagues possible. That's why I want to do a detailed review focusing on what could be improved for future iterations, because RS3 will get another league. And the right criticism and changes from the devs, it could be one of, if not the best leagues RuneScape has ever seen. So this video will be structured into several different sections. The first one I'm going to start off with is community, and then I'm going to dig deep into like the pre-release stuff, like to build hype, do a breakdown of that, then go into the release, the relic system, where I'm going to spend quite a bit of time breaking down the stats of the relics, and then I'm going to do a progression comparison of RS3 versus Oldschool RS, as I've done both and I've recorded both, so I know exactly how long it took me to get to specific spots in both. And then I'm going into the task and kind of the content that got pushed heavy onto the players for this leagues. I may or may not have a pretty lengthy crash out on this, so just fair warning on that. And then I'm going to go into the bugs and other technical issues, and then I'm going to dig into the rewards that were given out for us, and then I'm going to dig into what changes we need to have and how do we fix it for the next leagues. So let's get into it. First, I want to talk about the community around leagues, and RS3 in general. Regardless of how you feel about this league, I generally believe you can make your voice heard in a way that will shape the next league. And that's so important, because for most things for RS3, it just often feels like the devs aren't listening to community feedback, and this next year they're really trying to prioritize making changes that the community really needs. I also want to highlight just how close the community got during leagues and how much support new players received. We saw this a bit with Group Ironman, but this felt like a whole different level. People like RS Guy created a full website to help support new players, and I want to give a huge shout out to myself in the league's Discord. We started with less than 10 people, and we built a community with nearly 5,000 people. I couldn't be prouder of that. I also want to call out some great work from Jagex side, like mods like Azena and Yui were heavily engaged with the community. Things like the FAQ threads on Reddit covering quests, feedback, drop rate shenanigans, etc. were great to see. As someone who plays RS3 as their primary RuneScape, that level of engagement is unfortunately pretty rare, so it was really nice to see them step up a bit when it came to leagues. Now let's talk about the pre-release phase. So this is going to include anything that happened right before the release of Leagues. Leagues for RS3 was first announced at RuneFest. Myself and so many others were instantly hyped. We immediately started thinking about how it could work for RS3, what mechanics would translate well, what would be different, and what unique RS3 content could shine in a Leagues format. I was personally involved early on in the feedback process with Jagex. I provided input on several points in several areas. So I did advocate for the world to not be area locked for the first leagues. RS3's world and quest structure is different from Oldschool RS, and area locking felt like it could create too many issues right out of the gate. And I do think there's value in just getting the data of like, what if the whole world was open up? I also emphasize that having a good UI to interact with the task list is going to be super important, especially since RS3 didn't have WikiSync at the time. Thankfully, Jagex worked with the Wiki team to implement this, which was huge. And then there were things that I did heavily push for that maybe felt like it kind of fell on deaf ears, specifically Quest. I specifically called out that Quest could make or break the leagues. It being required could instantly push people away. RS3 has so much content locked behind Quest, and though Quests in general are pretty good in RS3, people don't want to redo it and invest the 100 hours or so to do all the quests and get all the requirements for it, so we're not all built like Couchy. Honestly, they didn't solve this during the leagues. They did make some effort, and they did explain why they couldn't. I felt like there were other factors at play, specifically the timeline, that made this not happen. They also did do teasers going up till launch, but honestly, info was a bit thin before release. There was a lot of hype still, but not a ton of concrete details until you got closer to launch. That said, the hype was real, the community was buzzing, theory crafting was happening in full force, and people were generally excited for RS3 to finally get its own league. Launch day arrived with a very small delay, but overall the initial launch was relatively smooth. Props to Jagex for that. If you've done lots of temporary game modes under the Jagex IP or RuneScape IP, you understand that a few hour delays are very, very common for things like this, so a small delay is a good release in my opinion. However, there were definitely some rough spots right out of the gate. We did have interface issues starting off. I mean, the UI in RS3 is rough, and it shined even more here with a new league pop-up. So that was immediately an issue for a few people. But there was a lot of good. The world selection UI was a very nice addition. Being able to transfer a reward to another account was huge. This is something that all other leagues should have, and I hope all of the old school leagues following this a similar thing. The sound for completing tasks. Chef's kiss, and I instantly fell in love with this cue, and I think it's the best that they did. The sound design for leagues was very good. Despite the UI hiccups, once you got past the initial confusion, the core experience was very, very solid. So let's talk about the Relic system. This is where things get a little bit more interesting and I get a little bit more yappy. So some of the good stuff, let's just go ahead and cover some of the good stuff. So Jagex did an amazing job on some of the relics and some of the passives. Perfection is a perfect, and I mean perfect, chef's kiss example of what Leagues is for. Passives like being able to cast advanced time spell without a limit. Absolutely amazing. Whoever came up with that idea during a meeting, just fantastic. Movement cooldown abilities being reduced to 4.8 seconds. This is just so much fun. It's so boring to go back to the main game. And then small stuff like all tool belt items being unlocked. That's just a massive quality of life that I wasn't expecting. And then they did various other changes. What this caused and some things that came out of this was very specific, unique methods that could only be done during Leagues. And I kind of want to call it a few things that formed during this. So, because that's really what Leagues is for, is those unique RuneScape experience that you can only get during Leagues. So the first one is the unlimited time skip spell. Being able to spam advanced time without any limit completely changed how you approach skilling, changed what your priorities are for skilling, like getting 100 rune crafting and stuff like that just became much higher priority. This was also perfect for Leagues and it felt incredible. Another one that I want to call out in the last one is Farming Frenzy plus the Cyware Hour. This combo was like super unique and I don't think anyone predicted this one. It felt like this was one of those that came later in Leagues because people started playing with it, but being able to just gain millions of XP in your lowest skill, no matter what skill it is, by just doing farming and catching butterflies during Cyware Hour, that's a unique one. That's one I didn't get to partake in one, but that's the one method that kind of gave me a little bit of regret on my current picks, but those two are just prime examples of what we need more of and what gave a unique experience that made it worth playing. So Jagex, please give us more of those. Those take a lot more creativity, but that's what we really, really want. Also, using Sierra Sword on Rex was also a lot of fun. More of that, please. Now that we went over some of the good stuff, let's go over the not so nice stuff. So some of the problems that came from this league. So the good stuff was very, very far in between, honestly. This gets more into just how relic progression was and the balance around them. So here's some stats. So the main thing I want to call out is a good relic system, one, makes you feel strong early and makes you feel like you're playing a different game. And the two is having diverse options. But the issue this league is, as you can see, almost every tier had a clear best pick. When 70 to 99% of players are choosing the same relic, that's a diversity problem. Compare this to Oldschool RS leagues where, yes, they had picks occasionally that were 99% or higher, but they're way more balanced. Many tiers had 40 to 50% splits between two strong options, and that's really what you want. Meanwhile, the RS3 relic system felt like there was always a correct choice and there wasn't as much variety. Many choices felt obvious, which made the decision making less interesting. Another huge issue here is there's no reward for number of tasks completed. Every other league had something with task count. Every single one. You're either picking another relic, unlocking more passives, unlocking areas, stuff like that. And that was a huge miss where they had this whole other realm where they could feed us rewards. RS3 Leagues is the only league to not reward task count, which is a key part of League's gameplay. It devalues those small tasks, easy tasks, and only rewards max points per hour grinding, which to me is just not a fun way to do Leagues. So to me, they have to have a reward system for number of tasks completed, as well as the number of points that you get from grinding out tasks. That gets me into the next point, which is comparing the progression paths between RS3 and Oldschool RS. So let me paint a picture of the first 12 hours in both leagues. So the last leagues for Oldschool, I unlocked tier 5 in an hour and 38 minutes mark on day 1. Over 30,000 people were ahead of me at this point as well. Within the first 12 hours, I had already had combat buffs and was doing 3 to 4 times the damage I would do in the same game with similar gear. By the 20 to 25 hour mark, I was already unlocking all the combat buffs for melee, and I felt so strong. Now, when you look at the RS3 side, I unlocked tier 3 at the 6 hour mark. Tier 4 Production Master took me 12 hours, and I was in the top 1% of players. At this point, I had no noticeable combat buffs, literally zero. By the 20 to 25 hour mark, I was just unlocking buffs that felt good, like just now starting to do stuff, but I was significantly not as OP as I was hoping for. Melee was the best style. All other styles barely felt different outside of the 100% accuracy and some small stuff with Necromancer, but honestly, this should have been a passive for all styles from the start, the 100% accuracy. It just felt so bad on RS3 early to do off style or just early game combat in general. The progression in RS3 felt slow, like really slow. Jagex did tone down the point requirements for tiers later on, but the damage is already done for the early adapters. I do want to compare the RuneScape 3 player base to the old school player base. So last leagues had a player count of 400,000 plus people on the highest scores for last leagues. It's actually 411,000. The Deadman mode also had 400,000 players playing. Now the RS3's first league had 120,000. RS3 had a decent turnout, but the retention could have been better with faster and more rewarding progression. Now RS3 does have a lower player count, so I actually do see 100k plus players participating in this first leagues as a honestly success on that end, but we can do better. Now let's talk about some of the tasks and the core gameplay. So the UI for the task was actually really solid. I think it is better than anything Oldschool RS has had before for tasks. The pop-up showing tasks that you can do in a specific area is actually really, really cool. And some tasks for specific content was actually fairly well done. I'm thinking all the tasks that they had for necromancy was actually really, really solid, and the content that you should be trying to have people do. Archaeology, same boat. And they did include some of the new quest lines like Extinction, the Blood Pact, and stuff like that. And I have to mention again, the task completion sound was really, really, really good. But the task is actually where I have the biggest issues out of the whole league, as it directly affected the fun that you have with leagues, with other people, and what content you interact with. So they had no task for the coolest bosses in the game. Amasket, the newest boss, the Soul Devourer, coolest boss in game in my opinion, specifically with the team, and there were no tasks outside of KC. Absolutely crazy to me. Zamrock, second coolest boss in the game. No task. Gate of Eladinus, no task around equipping some of the items, so there's no real reason to do it outside of the KC task. ED1, literally no task whatsoever. Vorkath, hit or miss, they had a KC task, but honestly, if you don't want people to do that content, that's fine by me. And then Solak, nothing. Nothing at all. Nothing for getting the Grimoire, nothing for getting the crossbows. It's just crazy to me. And then the tasks that they could have just expanded more on, like, I imagine as a RuneScape 3 dev, you want people to experience a good content. What's a good content? It's the bosses. So, like, tasks that were done really, really well was Araxor. It was done perfectly. It had combat achievements, tasks, etc. But then Amasket and Vorkat just got to KC tasks. Like, what? Sorry, I'm crashing out a little bit here because it's crazy to me. They could have just followed the format of Araxor and then applied it to the other bosses. Like, even entry-level stuff like Giant Mole could have had some combat achievement tasks. King Black Dragon could have had combat achievement tasks. Like, do those type of things. Take the combat achievements and tie it into the tasks. And then, not even the PVM side of things. They were missing skill-based tasks that showcase RS3's unique mechanics. Example of this is empowering a divination rift. Use a Mystic Sand Seed teleport. Create a Hydrix jewelry. Add a soul to the Sunken Pyramid. Unlock Ancient Invention. Unlock Ancient Summoning. Steal from every safe. Like, there's so many tasks that they could have just added that would have, like, spread the old school players enough to, like, experience the good shit that's in RS3. I just don't understand. They copied and pasted the old school task, which is a good start. And then they manually added some terrible tasks. It doesn't make any sense. For example, they manually added obtain Dark Lord title by unlocking a selection of titles from Prifdinus. This unlocks, like, I shit you not, like, this requires 100+ hours of content, including a quest cape and a load of other stuff, like getting statue pieces and stuff like that. And then they had tasks like, man, I could go on and on about this. So the other bad task I can think of is like 150 master clues. That one's like insane. Equip every god book. This should have been easy, but then they had a bug that existed the whole time that made it almost impossible to get the pages. And then they had just massive oversights of like inconsistencies. So they had plenty of achievement area tasks for like completing Elite Varrock and stuff like that. But then, like, you had no tasks for the achievement diaries for Seer's Village or Daemonheim. Just major oversight. I just don't understand it. They had some clear issues with their tasks, and they put their energy in the wrong things. All the time that they put for some of the shit tasks, they could have just put on, like, bossing tasks. Sorry, crash out done, but, like, they messed up so bad on the task for in-game. So bad. Everyone who's a Melier and did Zamrock and got 0 tasks for it whatsoever knows what I'm talking about. And then those people that took magic but couldn't find anyone to do a Amasket with, because there was no task around it. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. So that's my biggest gripe, honestly, is like the in-game felt shit because there were no task around it and the content that people actually wanted to try and do. And then they had bugs around the tasks, like the number of, like once you got all the relics, your number was just off in the right. You didn't have the ability to pin task, and you didn't have a way to like show completion percentage and sort by it, so you still had to use the wiki sync. And yeah, this just gets me into bugs. There's quite a few of them. I mentioned earlier that the God page drop rates were bugged for clue scrolls. Players had to do thousands of clues to get God pages, and this was never fixed, though it was flagged like day 1, day 2. Quest-related bugs caused many issues for some players. Items not being boosted or were not as common as they should have been through some weird bugs preventing drop rates from being like less than 1 in 10. Like stuff like that existing. Bosses that didn't benefit from the Ring of Wealth in the base game also just didn't get the boosted drop rates in leagues. For example, Linza from Barrows wasn't boosted at all. This created inconsistent and frustrating experiences when farming certain content because you would just go dry and then the whole time you're questioning if it's boosted or not. Like I was firsthand doing this where I was like, man, am I going dry because it's bugged or not? So oh man, it was just not a fun experience. Tasks that literally could not be completed as well. Like for example, equip a Slayer Helm. You could have a Slayer Helm, a full Slayer Helm, and it just wouldn't complete. And there's like, I think there's at least 3 or 4 other tasks where you just do it and it wouldn't get ticked off. This specifically blocked. And some of these weren't just minor annoyances. They were progression blockers for some people. And the lack of hotfixes or the quickness of the hotfixes was incredibly frustrating, and the communication around drop rates specifically, where we're going back and forth with Jagex saying like this is bugged and they're saying no it's not, and then 3 days later they're like you guys were right, we're doing a fix now. It just sucked. And if you were someone that went dry, Wazzy got hella fucked on this, not gonna lie, for sometimes tens of hours on something. It sucked even more, and I know people quit because of this, because it was just incredibly taxing on the brain of just like, is this bugged or am I going dry? It just was not fun. And Old School has had bugs like this before, don't get me wrong, but they fixed them and they communicated well. I felt like there was huge room for improvement around communication around all of this and documentation going forward. Let's talk about rewards, because honestly, they weren't great. The most rewarding thing were the dragon trophy icons that appeared in your chat, which I actually wasn't aware was going to carry over into the main game, and that ended up being the best reward. The pet's also kind of neat, and same with the aura and some of the ability overrides, but outside of those, pretty lackluster. They tried to copy the outfit style rewards from Oldschool RS leagues, which, let's be honest, also suck over there. The outfits really don't feel special or unique. More so in RS3 because we already have so many other cosmetics. The ability changes you unlocked were really cool though, but overall the reward structures felt uninspired. The trophy, God, the trophy is just so sad to look at compared to Oldschool RS. I don't know why they didn't just make it look heavy and cool thing that you carry around like in Old School. Instead, it's just there. It doesn't have the same presence or prestige. For something that's supposed to represent your achievement in leagues, it feels like a massive missed opportunity. Rewards need to feel special. They need to be things you're proud to show off. RS3 League's rewards really didn't hit the mark, and this was felt across the whole community. As soon as the rewards dropped, a lot of people quit. So I've complained a lot, and I talked about my experience, but how do we fix things? How do we make the leagues we want? RS3 Leagues has massive potential. With the right changes, the next leagues could be the best one ever made. So the following are things that I think we should do. First is make relics more impactful and diverse. Add more overpowered, fun, passive early into progression. Balance relic choices so not a single option is 70 to 99% pick rate, Or hell, just change it so we can unlock all of them at some point. Reward players for total task count with extra relics passes, or just some upgrade or unlock system. Example of missing power fantasies, summoning familiars I feel were a giant miss. You could have done cool things like making them big as well, and constantly having them auto-spec or deal significantly more damage. No rune costs at all for all spells, would remove any inventory management aspects, or it's just a good quality of life. These are all kind of OP and fun mechanics that make leagues exciting. Allow more than one combat style to feel strong. Gridmaster did this really well, and I think it's something that's just fun. Some bosses are hard locked to specific styles like Reziel, requiring necromancy, and it feels terrible in a league's format when you're doing it slower than if you were doing it on your main in the main game. All 4 combat styles should feel powerful enough to tackle any content. We also need faster progression. Lower the point requirements for early tiers, or just kind of throw out how we do unlocks currently. Front load combat buffs so players feel powerful sooner. Add more unlocks similar to Gridmaster, things like weapon unlocks, teleport unlocks, or skill boosts that happen as you progress. These constant mini unlocks help progression feel faster and more rewarding, keeping players engaged. After that, I want to tackle maybe creating a better task system and tasks in general. Example of this is we could use tasks completed to unlock specific quest lines. This removes the feeling of having to do quests and makes you more willing to grind out some tasks so you can unlock this cool unlock that's blocked behind a quest. We also need to add tasks for RuneScape 3's coolest, most unique content. So I think Zamrock, Amasket, Solak, the things that I complained about earlier. And then we need to include more skill-based objectives, so think about your journey as a main and the specific unlocks you're going to do anyways. So think Ancient Invention, Ancient Summoning, things of that nature. And then we need to remove or just rework the ridiculous grinds that happen this league in general. The Dark Lord title specifically, either if it is a task, needs to be adjusted so things are more common, such as the rocks, or the quests are completed in some other format, and it wouldn't be as bad. 4. Fix drop rates and be transparent with everything. Clear communication on what is boosted is going to save lives. And fix the bug drops immediately if they get discovered during a league. And then we need quality of life improvements. Think better teleport system with the last teleport feature on the unlocks that you do unlock. Quick chat for league points would be nice. Examine players to see relic choices and things of that nature. Task pinning and completion percentage sorting in a UI would be good. Community engagement. Keep engagement with the community. So think about releasing stats for relics that were picked and fun stats like that. People love numbers, and this is something Old School does, and we just got a teaser of it for a single day and then it just stopped from there. Continue Reddit threads and FAQs, and listen to feedback and act on it quickly. Number 7, clear communication and defined end time. Have a very, very clearly defined end time that's communicated well in advance. RS3 leagues didn't end when I thought it would have. There was a lot of confusion in general. I was planning on celebrating the end of leagues, and I woke up really early on a Monday before work, and I just found out that it just got updated like an hour before it said it would. The information we did have was wrong. This meant Americans or other time zones just couldn't even watch the end of it. For something as important as the final hours of a competitive event, this is just unacceptable in my opinion. Make it clear, date, time, and time zone. Build an event around it with the community, because this will encourage fun things like funny screenshots with a bunch of items on the ground, everyone being together in one spot. You can have a lot of fun with this. Just literally drop party hats and stuff somewhere in the world so everyone groups onto it, and it's just going to get deleted anyway. So we need to have fun events towards the end of leagues. Number 8, take inspiration from Gridmaster. If there's one thing I learned from Gridmaster is it's really fun doing a lot of big unlocks. and having unique weapons and stuff like that. I think Gridmaster and Leagues are both good ways to have a temporary game mode. Gridmaster doesn't have quite the sense of accomplishment, but also has zero burnout, where ours, like just Leagues in general, do have burnout. So if there's some way we can have more of that replayability, but still make it maybe longer than a 24-hour game mode, that's what I think would be the goal. So, in conclusion, was RS3's first league a success? Yes and no. It had amazing community engagement, some fantastic relic design for some of them, and it showcases a lot of what makes RS3 unique. But it also had major issues with progression pacing, relic diversity, task design, and buggy content that went unfixed for too long. The good news, all of these are fixable. Jagex has the foundation. Now they just need to listen to feedback, iterate, and make the next league truly special. I thoroughly enjoyed this league. It was the most satisfying one I've ever played, despite its flaws, and I'm so hyped for the next one. If you made it this far, thank you for watching truly. Let me know in the comments what your biggest takeaway for RuneScape 3 Leagues was, and what you changed next time. And if you want to stay updated for future League content, make sure to subscribe and join the League's Discord that I'll have below. Until next time, bye.